welcome to That Dog Training Show with Tanya Yarbrough, and this is me, because ain't nobody else doing this for me, because that's the way it goes, just like your life. So, welcome to number 52 or 53, something crazy like that, and this is 52. Sound engineer saves my butt again. Number 52. And I just want to give you a reminder for those of you who are in the Los Angeles area. There are new classes starting this weekend, the 16th and 17th. That's master distraction and street obedience and basic obedience and movie tricks. Check it out on bluecollarworkingdog.com. And also the Pack Leadership Seminar, the Pack Leadership 101 Seminar is this Sunday night, the 17th. If you want to attend this is where no dogs are there, but it's all people. It's 3 hours, and no one's left because they're bored. They actually stay and enjoy themselves and learn things. So if you are interested in signing up for that, go ahead and email me at thatdogtrainingshow@gmail.com or hello@kazzidogtraining.com. That's KAZZI dogtraining.com. Also, you can find me on the Instagram community under That Dog Training Show, and also on Twitter at KazziDogTrain, because ING was too long. So, this show is called, Is It Training or Is It Coincidence? Definition of coincidence, just off the top here. First of all, a remarkable concurrence of events or circumstances without apparent causal connection. For instance, synonyms would be accident, chance, serendipity, fortuity, providence, happenstance, fate, a fluke. The second definition of coincidence, correspondence in nature or in time of occurrence. I'm going to repeat that, in time of occurrence. That's super huge in dog training. Co-occurrence, coexistence, conjunction, simultaneity, contemporaneity, committance, correspondence, agreement, accord, concurrence, consistency, conformity, harmony. You get the idea. So, when it comes to training animals, dogs or otherwise, one often makes a little easy mistake that can be made when it comes to assessing your success in teaching the animal that learned behavior. And this is something that I run into all the time with students and clients, and even myself. I have to watch out for myself because sometimes I do make mistakes. What a shock. So I come across this often, and the way it comes across is that many people will claim their dogs are trained to do this or that already. They didn't have to do anything. Their dogs just knew how to do it. This is always a bit of a red flag, or maybe a pink flag. It's not that dramatic, if you will. But the problem is that if a dog just automatically started doing something like going into the crate on its own accord, even seems to enjoy doing so, this is not the same thing as calling the dog crate trained, which is what I get told. Oh, yes, my dog is crate trained. Or, for instance, if the dog never eliminated, that's peed or pooped for those who thought science and vocabulary was boring in school. That is, if your dog never eliminated in your house, that's not the same thing as having a dog that is actually housebroken. So the problem with this assumption is that you might just be lucky. For instance, going back to the two examples, starting with the crate training. In the case of the crate training, your dog naturally, as a dog, likes to crate itself when tired or stressed out. So the crate training itself actually means that the dog is willing to go in the crate at the will of the owner, let the door be closed, and still be able to relax inside the crate. That's the definition of actual crate training. Id-est, i.e., the dog has learned to respond physically and psychologically to the command of the owner, and as a response to completing the behavior. They relax in there, they're willing to let you close the door, they'll do it any time of the day, not just at night or when you leave or whatever. If you cannot get your dog to go into the crate on command, have the door closed, and then they become relaxed as a result, you have a dog who likes the crate as it pleases him or her, but is not trained to enjoy it outside of their own desires. That's the opposite of training. That's just, you happen to have a crate and the dog happens to use it in a natural dog way, but it's not crate trained. When it comes to house training, for instance, your dog may have decided they own the entire house and therefore do not want to eliminate, i.e. pee or poop, inside their house. I mean, all caps, their house. So they've decided they own the whole thing. and so they can sleep anywhere, and therefore they would not want to urinate or defecate in their house, even if though you pay the rent and everything else. So you will see deterioration of this house training. I'm making squeaky noises, and the very diligent engineer is face. It's not her fault. I'm effing up over here. All right, you will see deterioration of this house training in the form of marking your things like bed, shoes, laundry, etc. Because your dog, they are angry with you, or they think you have crossed the line in terms of boundaries they have set for you, not the other way around. Meaning you are the boundary setter and your dog follows, respects those boundaries. That's actually the ideal. So you may be, once again, just lucky that your dog doesn't want to pee and poop in their house, as far as they're concerned. Another common way that people think their dog is trained to do behavior is because their dog can do something in one context, and therefore they think their dog can do these behaviors in any context. Using the crate training as an example, maybe you can get your dog to go into the crate on command and is comfortable staying in there with the door closed. Fabulous, you've got that part down. But what if it's a fern crate? That's foreign for you people who are not from the South. What if it's a foreign crate, i.e. they're not their crate, like at the vet's office, at a kennel, at a friend's house with a friend's old dog's crate. You know, you just need it like you're at a barbecue, whatever, and your dog's a little round up and you need to crate them. You say, oh, I just use this crate, and your dog refuses. Does the dog understand and comply with the command to be crated in those contexts? If not, they are also not truly crate trained. Or go back to house training. Ooh, that is always a sad realization, isn't it? You thought your dog was totally house trained, you go to a friend's house and they just take a shit on their carpet. So does your dog maintain the house training at someone else's house? In the pet store where they're allowed to have dogs and cats and inside? Likely not if you didn't actually train the behavior in those contexts, if you didn't test it out. Especially not if the dog is house trained, quote unquote, because they think they own your house, which means everything else they go is fair game for marking. So, you know, they don't want to piss in their house, but they'll piss in somebody else's. They don't understand the concept inside and outside, not like we do. They just assume if it's outside of my bed, it's fair game, and your whole house is their bed. So there it is, you got lucky. What people oftentimes experience is a dog happening to do or avoid doing what the owner wants, with no effort on the owner's part, and proclaim their dog is trained for that behavior. So the reality is that the dog owner is likely experiencing coincidence. The dog does or does not do something simply because it pleases the dog in that context, and it happens to match what the owners want. Yay for you guys. But it's not the same thing as actually training the dog and teaching them that learned behavior to maintain it through several contexts. So the same kind of mistake in terms of deeming a behavior as trained can happen with any other behavior in the process of learning. So it's not just, basic house training, etc. Anytime, like any of the behaviors, when I teach classes, I have to help each one of the individuals working with their dog saying, okay, great, you got the down, but is it a fluke? Let's make sure it's not a fluke. And it's really easy to go there, and I'll explain how this works. So, for instance, teaching the dog to sit or down, which is when the dog is lying on the ground, by the way. Down is when the dog is lying on the ground in an upright position rather than on its side. Down does not mean get off the couch, folks. Off means get off the couch. So try not to confuse your dog with that. But down is actually when the dog is laying on the ground on the floor in an upright position. So it's got its shoulders off the ground. All right. So in teaching a sit or a down, the dog may naturally desire to offer the sit or down in the process of teaching the command. I.e., I bring out a treat or a toy, and just because of their focused interest on what I have in my hand and our height differences, the dog sits, which is a natural peace sign among dogs, by the way. And I think, whoa, did you see that? The dog already knew I wanted it to sit, so I give the toy or a treat to the dog. It was freaking amazing. My dog's like psychic, I swear. All right, and maybe it happens fairly consistently, over and over again. As soon as I have something interesting in my hand, the dog sits, and if it's a dog-appropriate thing, I say good, and I give the toy or treat to the dog, and I think in my head, my dog is trained to sit. But that is not the same thing as asking the dog to sit, teaching it to do so with or without a visible reward. That's totally different. And then, of course, the context thing. So rather, that whole scenario was a coincidence. that the dog preferred to offer a sit on its own upon interest in what was in my hand. I just happened to want to sit, the dog happened to offer a sit, and therefore I thought I had made some fantastic connection. My dog is a genius. Your dog may be a genius, but here's what's going on. Once there's nothing interesting there, i.e. in another context, the sit doesn't happen on command, the dog didn't learn the word, nor a hand signal, nor did the dog learn to do the behavior for the sheer joy of your praise. So what actually happened, it was a coincidence that turned into the dog sitting to get you to release what was in your hand, so the dog trained you to drop it. That's what happened. And then you wonder why you can't get the dog to sit on command when your friends come over at the house, or when you're on the street at a cafe or whatever, because the dog actually knows to sit to make you drop things. It's a way of begging, by the way, as well. So they'll sit at the table waiting for you to drop food, even if you've never given them food before. So this is a coincidental thing that you automatically thought you had trained your dog to do. You didn't associate a way of marking that they did the behavior, or give them a command either by physical cue or by verbal cue or both, and you didn't make it clear that it was on your command. So to avoid such a mistake, which is easy to do, of thinking you trained your dog to do certain behaviors, here's some tips for you. So this is the meat of it here. Number 1, make sure you initiate with a hand signal or verbal cue, whichever comes first for that behavior and your style of training. The dog does the behavior, and then you reward. Never reward a dog for offering a behavior unless you are capturing a behavior that you are not manipulating, and I will explain later what capturing a behavior means. So if you are trying to manipulate the situation, i.e. train the dog to do something on command, wait till you offer some sort of movement or verbal cue to try to manipulate the dog or convince the dog to give you that behavior, and then reward it. So in that case, they're now doing it on your command, not vice versa. So number 2, make sure you test this sequence several times in a row to see if it was not a fluke or a coincidence before you deemed it fully learned by the dog. Once again, you can get lucky a couple times. They might offer you that sit natural because they just prefer that, or because you're so tall over your dog, it's easier for them to look at you when they sit. So these are the kinds of things you got to make sure are, is it following my cue, giving me the sit, then I reward it, as opposed to it was a coincidence. And are you getting some consistency in this moment? Number 3, make sure you test this behavior on command in several contexts, not just in your home. Is it in several places in your home? Is it out next to the door, outside, a little bit? It ain't a learned behavior, folks, if you haven't stretched it a little bit in terms of duration, distance, and distraction. Test it just a tiny, tiny bit, and that's after you get some consistency in responding for your asking for the behavior with no duration, distance, and distraction. So once you've got consistency, okay, every time I make this movement, the dog moves into a sit, I say good, I give the treat, it's happening over and over, I'm changing the position slightly, a little bit here and there in the household, I'm not doing it in the exact same spot every single time. Now I'm going to test it a little bit in different contexts with different noise backgrounds, etc., and I'm getting some consistency. I think I've got to learn behavior. Number 4, make sure you test the behavior over a period of several days. The dog may get it one day, quote unquote get it, but lose it for a while, which is kind of a form of normal regression during the process of learning. This happens, it's actually normal. Work on it again, make sure it's consistent over a period of time, the next day or the following day. Us crazy trainers, sometimes we purposely drop a behavior right after it's learned, work on other behaviors, and come back to the original one. So, for instance, if I was working on a down and the dog finally got it, which is actually difficult for a dog, they were asking a dog to completely relax and not drive for a behavior to receive a reward, and that's kind of counterintuitive for a dog, if you can say that. So let's say, for instance, I'm learning the down, and then I finally got it. We struggled, blah, blah, blah. We got it. I'm like, end that training session with a high note, all excited, make the dog want more. The next time I train, I might train